Volume 1, Chapter 11. Spider Hunting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 45, Class, Noble, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death. The forest stretches endlessly. And in it, I stand before a powerful foe. At times like this, my very being cannot help but quiver, elated at the thought of battling a worthy adversary. Kisha, 8 giant, long legs support its body. And its 8 eyeballs gleam a light of dark red. Not a hint of life could be felt from those eyes. As if they were naught but balls of glass, those dark red eyes of it, gleam lifelessly, gazing into me. Only one thing is certain, it acknowledges me as its prey. I bring the iron second, steel great sword, over my shoulder. I balance myself, and I tilt myself forward. The weight of the sword, my grip on its hilt, the sensation of my feet planted firmly on the ground, all of these information are surging into me, my senses heightened. Now, not even the movement of the giant spider's capillaries can escape my eyes. Similarly, my sense of hearing has also heightened, allowing me to hear even the breathing of all that is living around the spider. I look at the spider and ascertain the distance between it and me. I exhale. As I exhale, the breath that came out was hot like the raging fire within my body. I am standing here now. Here, right before the strong of the forest, the giant spider. Yes, I dare challenge it. Gi-gu and Giga are in the surrounding thickets, watching attentively with bated breaths. In a normal hunt, we would have prepared traps beforehand, ensuring our victory. However, this time is different. In truth, it could be said that this is nothing more than my selfishness. Right now, I am insufficient. So I'm doing this to remedy that. That I might be able to overcome Reshia's overwhelming power. So far I've lost twice. Once when I was swallowed by the will of the goddess of the underworld, and another when I ended up bowing my head to her. Reshia is alluring, very alluring. In fact, her charm is so powerful that even when we're only talking it feels as if my very soul could be pulled out by her at any moment. Such atrocious power, there's no other way to put it. Absolute charm. It is highly probable that there is something going on between the goddess of the underworld and the goddess of healing. A special bond that's causing this unexplainable phenomenon. This sensation that's seducing me to drown within that woman. And that's why I must do this. I must, at all costs, challenge a foe that I have little chance of defeating. As for whether I can or cannot win, I must bring out all of my power, from every fiber of this body of mine, and present to my partner in this dance of life and death a bloodbath. Must. No, I will. I will bring to it a bloodbath. Else how could I ever dream of conquering that woman, that saint's overwhelming power? Gurua. Out of my mouth, bellowed out overpowering howl, greeting the foe before me. Skill, activated, computing the target's weakness. But a spider's body was only made up of its head, its body, and its legs to begin with. Humph. Even a fool could figure this out. What a useless skill. The blood having gone to my head, I couldn't help but hurl insults at the useless skill inside my mind. Then in an instant, the spider appeared to compress itself. Using its entire body like a spring, it leaped. At the same time, venom hurled from its mouth as it towered over me. I managed to find a path to survival underneath those 8 legs of it as I swung the iron second, steel great sword, and dived through it. In the process, I sent one of its legs flying, and the giant spider realized that its attack has failed. Immediately, the spider stopped and tried to regain its balance, after which it came pouncing again. Having just dived out of harm's way, I could not dodge the spider's charge, and could only shield myself with my sword as I received the brunt of its attack. The impact sent me flying, and I felt pain spread from my back as I laid down on the ground. It felt as if a burning staff had just impaled itself through my lungs as I choked, unable to properly breathe. But the enemy would not give me the comfort of rest, no. Already, it was on its way to feast on me as it leaped towards me. Sheet, it's fast. Unable to ascertain where my foe would land, I left everything to my instincts and swung my sword. Fortunately, and perhaps thanks to the skill, swordsmanship C+, my sword managed to lop off another one of the spider's forelegs. Continuing that momentum, I slashed upwards. But before my sword could reach the spider, my shoulder was pierced by one of the spider's sharp limbs. I almost released my grip on the sword, but I gripped it once again with my hand, and I swung it down, leaving the strength to its weight. That steel great sword came crashing down, and not even the limb that had pierced into my shoulder would be left standing at its descent. Immediately, the spider jumped back. Boom! A thunderous roar erupted, leaving nothing but a crater on the ground. But the giant spider was a moment faster, and it was able to dodge. Fortunately, it was not uninjured. Green bodily fluids could be seen flowing from half of its eyes, and 3 of its limbs have already been severed. But the spider still hasn't lost its will to fight. The spider let out a menacing shriek as it watched me. This duel is starting to look bleak for me. After that last attack, the wound on my shoulder's been bleeding incessantly. I don't have time. As I took a slashing stance, I kicked off against the ground with all my strength, and slashed at the spider, but it slipped. An unstable sword due to impatience. And too much power that moved the sword too high. These 2 factors together caused my sword to miss its target, and the sword that should have skewered the giant spider slid against its body instead. TCH, at that irrevocable miss, the giant spider closed in. Like a spring, it leaped at me, and aimed for my shoulders with its venomous fangs. TCH. If I take a step back here. If I take a step back here, then the giant spider will push and hold me down. Regardless of what I do, the situation's bad. At that instant, I decided to fight the spider head-on. I met the charge of the spider with my own, and my arm that was caught in between, creaked a horrible sound. I know that it can't be helped. There truly was no other way left, but still, the price I had to pay to dodge the giant spider's venomous fangs was simply too high. Having no luxury to wallow in my loss, I swallowed whatever bitterness I had, and took back my sword. At this distance, the spider won't be able to move its legs freely. So I'll make full use of this, and smash the spider's head with iron second. Kishua. The spider let out confused shrieks as if it was the first time it had felt pain. As one would expect, the great sword that should be used with 2 hands can't quite put enough power with only 1 hand. The sword smashed against the spider's head, but it failed to sever it and could only stop at the surface. Don't hold back. Let him have it. I raised my broken arm, and I pushed the large, double-edged sword into the spider's head. Green bodily liquid spurted all over my body as blue blood from my shoulder dyed the spider's head, blue. Goo, Nuai Triple. I exerted all of my strength and pushed the great sword in the spider's head. But at the same instant, I felt pain in my stomach, and I was pushed away. The spider had swept me with its foreleg. Goo, ha. I coughed dark blue blood out. This is my chance. Supporting my body with my remaining arm, I endured the fatigue and pain as I stood up once more. My sword is still stuck into the spider. I don't have a weapon. But that doesn't matter. I've already come this far. Whether I have a weapon or not, whether I have a strong body or not, and whether there's a difference in strength between races, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is the will to live. And this instinct that's screaming inside me to kill my opponent. Rua-e. I bellowed out a cry from the bottom of my stomach, and blue blood came spurting along with it, but the blood was irrelevant. With my remaining strength, I kicked off against the ground, and with one arm dangling, I swung my last remaining arm. The spider responded to my howl. The staggering spider looked at me with those red black eyes of it that's flowing with green bodily liquid. Kishua. Driven by instinct, it rushed my direction with my sword still stuck to it. Completely absorbed, I moved my legs, and I swung my arms. At the same time, the spider unleashed its sharp, long limbs at me. In an instant it was as if everything had slowed down. The world, and everything in it, had come to a near halt, and all the sounds in the world seemed to have left that we greeted each other with a howl and we fought each other with nothing but our fists, skill, activated. Unintentionally, the skill's conditions were met, and power filled my body. Each step against the ground was brimming with power, pushing me against the ground faster than ever. But still, the spider's attack was still a moment faster. It was just that fast. Both of us aiming for each other, the spider's limbs to my head, and my fist to its head. Both were mid-flight, neither able to stop. In a move of desperation, I moved my head. I pushed my agility to its limits, and mustered everything I could out of my muscles. Heat rushed through the side of my forehead. Not yet. I need one more step. At that moment, I saw the foreleg of the spider, swinging, from the corner of my eyes. If it hits, everything will be for naught. I don't have any strength left. And my body's even gone cold from all the bleeding. But, despite all that, I have to take this last step. I took the step, and with all my power focused, I let loose the contracted arm, unleashing a torrent of power into the spider's head. Oh! I yelled. Let the spider's head be crushed together with the cry of the earth. My fist sunk into the spider's head, penetrating it, and smashing it into the ground. Ha, ha, the death match decided, time and sound returned. Ha, ha, the spider, impaled into the ground, can no longer move. The only thing I can hear is my breath. The only thing I can feel, the burning pain and fatigue. The world is blurry. I can't think anymore. But I won, like that I lost my consciousness. You have leveled up. Level 45. 99, skill, acquired. Your strength will increase relative to how close you are to death. When only 1/3 of your life is remaining, physical strength 20% up, agility 20% up. When only 1/5 of your life is remaining, physical strength 30% up, agility 30% up. When only 1/10 of your life is remaining, physical strength 40% up, agility 40% up. Author's note. Make the fight scenes more detailed. Was requested, so I tried making it detailed. Skill will activate when the basic conditions are fulfilled. Volume 1, Chapter 12. Altesia's Temptation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 99, Class, Noble, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death. I can hear a voice from the dark abyss. Boy. It was gentle, full of hate, and at the same time, nauseating. Awaken. A fluffily floating-like sensation blew an intense will into me. Awaken, my child. That will dominated my body. At the voice's dictate, I opened my eyes, and before me was a woman accompanied by countless snakes. Have you finally awoken? To actually make your mother wait, how bold of you. Snakes of different colors coiled about around her voluptuous naked body, declaring her divinity. Her body looked to have been sculpted by the gods themselves, having no trace of imperfection. On her abundant breasts, was a four-eyed snake, colored like that of fine dress, snugly wrapped around her, seemingly emphasizing her seductive features. From her perfectly sculpted feet to her thighs, loosely crawling about was a black, twin-headed snake. And covering her lower body, was a green Yamata no Orochi with a red spiral pattern engraved into it. Her red lips were redder than blood itself. Her face perfect without any fault. Her nose, her mouth, every part carefully positioned to perfection. Her eyes shone gold, a color of lust gleaming through them. Her slightly wavy hair was bluer than the blue sky. And behind her were innumerable snakes. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, I suppose. Her honey-like sweet voice resounded in my ears, carrying with it seduction and a tinge of blood. My heart was greatly rattled. Who are you? She is alluring, so alluring that if I were to relax for even a moment, I would surely find myself bowed to her. I fought that urge while I kept my heart calm. But you already know that, right? What an enchanting smile, so much so that it feels as if it could melt any man's heart. To that vicious smile that could charm even a demon, I could only grit my teeth as I endured. Altesia, goddess of the underworld, is it? Yes, that's right. Oh, how I adore clever children. Those words almost broke my hips, but I somehow managed to fill my heart with hate and keep my calm. A soul that doesn't match that small body. How amusing. It's good that we're finally able to talk like this. As Altesia spoke, I was at my wit's end. At any time it felt as if I could be washed away by the feeling of being loved that was like lukewarm water. How cruel. That relaxed atmosphere suddenly, in one instant, turned cold. Her gold-colored pupils gazed into me a bone-freezing glance. That atmosphere finally allowed me to regain my composure. There's something I want to ask. Altesia, looking down on me, scowled without emotion. Were you the one who interfered with my thoughts? What about it? That smile she showed me almost charmed me, but knowing that it's fake, I was somehow able to resist. I won't forgive a second time. And if you don't forgive me, what are you going to do? Having my selfishness answered as if it was perfectly natural. Overpowering others with my overwhelming will. In normal times, that's how it'd go. But the being in front of me wouldn't falter from something like that. No, be nov calm, do you envy Zenobia, goddess of healing, that much? The atmosphere froze. Are you maddened by jealousy, Altesia? Shut your mouth. What's wrong being maddened by jealousy? I loved him so much. Yet he only ever had eyes for Zenobia. Why? I won't forgive Zenobia. Never. I, who fell into depravity, pushed into Hades, will never, ever forgive her. I will never forgive that woman who has never done anything but monopolize his love. Her beautiful countenance, gone. The corners of her eyes torn, blood flowing. The corners of her mouth torn to her ears. Why won't Ativ, the ancestor god who birthed the earth, look at me? The lamenting goddess of snakes was there. Exhaling hot air, she pressured me. The snakes responding to her wrath, simultaneously threatened. My child, my small, hideous child. Altesia cast her eyes down. Grant your mother's wish. An absolute decree. Lay waste to Ativ's world. Zenobia's, to that supreme bliss of an order that no being who has received divine protection could ever think of contesting. I refuse. I shook my head. For a moment, Altesia was at a loss to what I was saying and she titled her head in confusion. Not a trace of the demon snake princess's visage from a while ago could be seen. Her face now was exactly the same motherly face she showed me at first. I will not forgive that who has trespassed me. I rebel, therefore I am. You, the snakes wriggling under her all simultaneously surrounded me. That overwhelming force that could instantly destroy anything were they to attack. That same overwhelming force was now threatening me. You will betray me while having accepted my divine protection. Gazing at me with a look that looked like it could kill, I gazed back looking directly into her eyes. I will decide how I live. I have already died once. Let all regrets be left to the time I lived as man. I haven't the faintest attachment to this life of mine as a monster. And that's precisely why I no longer have any reason to bow my head in servility to any man or god. But, if they get in the way of my way of living, then I will, on my own volition, uproot them. The snakes continued to threaten me as the mother goddess asked. And what is this way of life of yours? Gambling everything I am as a monster, I threw out my chest. Conquest and domination. A path that can no longer be associated with peace or tranquility. I will make everything in heaven and on earth acknowledge me. I will trample on everything, and take everything for myself. And I will carve my name into the annals of history, never to be forgotten. A small pu came out, followed by short pauses of laughter, until eventually, Altesia burst out laughing as she held both of her sides. Ahahaha. You're amusing, really amusing. So what you're saying is that you're going to fight them by your will and not by my order. But still, conquest and domination, ahahahaha. How arrogant. How insolent. And to actually declare it so boldly with that tiny stature, bohahaha. That laughter was completely inappropriate for the bewitching goddess of snakes. It was as if Altesia had turned into a normal girl laughing her heart out to a funny story. Very well. I am pleased with you, said Altesia as she wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Silently, I stuck my tongue out. To think she would actually laugh at my heartfelt declaration, as expected of a goddess. In any case, it's good that I won't be dying for the meantime. Boy, you're quite the rebel, aren't you? Altesia looked at me closely, her face sparkling like that of a little girl who's found a new toy. Her face, looking like she wants to mess with me and get all sorts of reactions. Then she lightly grabbed the tongue I silently stuck and pulled it. Alright, whatever. A kid being as cute as he is stupid is a universal truth anyway. I can't talk with my tongue pulled like this. Sticking my tongue out was a mistake. Ho ho, now that I've taken a closer look, you have quite the charming face, don't you? She looked at me from top to bottom while tugging on my tongue. But, nah, you're definitely ugly. Be a bit more handsome, will you? Don't ask for the impossible. I can't even if I want to, you know. If the shape of the soul yearns for it, I could remold you. The underworld goddess's golden eyes gleamed on me. Well, whatever. Let us return to the main issue. The goddess of the underworld released my tongue, and clapped her hands. Immediately, the world changed. In a space where nothing can be seen, statues of demons that govern over death are lined up in the darkness. By the time I noticed it, Altesia had already positioned herself, sitting on the throne with her legs crossed. Wearing a pure white toga, she appeared both beautiful and divine. The very personification of an overwhelming god. I shall leave you with a gift. One snake from the innumerable snakes by Altesia's feet, crawled over to me. A small, one-eyed, red snake. I don't need a snake. Well, don't say that, said the goddess with a chuckle. Then immediately, the snake came at me at a frightening speed, slipping itself into the arm I tried to drive it away with, entering me, and going all the way to my chest. Oi! This thing actually went inside and merged with my body. That child is quite the adorable little thing, take care of it well. I don't care. Take it out. It's almost time. Then, until next time, my cute, little boy. Immediately, darkness took everything, and I fell. Warm light wrapped around me. The bustling noise by my ear urged me to wake. And slowly, I opened my eyes. The sun's strong, piercing light was harsh. It's probably around noon. Ah, the chief is awake, exclaimed Giga as he choked in tears of joy. Let everyone know. I can hear Giga running. And then. Why? Why are you doing something like this? When I saw Aretia laying her hand on my forehead, my heart jumped out. Then the nostalgic smell of blood wafted to my nose. The smell of blood, what happened? I asked, with this still dull and aching body. Giga hung his head in shame, and Aretia answered instead. Your village was attacked. And from the looks of things, over half of your subordinates have been injured or killed. By who? I slapped my face with all of my strength, knocking awake my drowsy head. Orc. As Reshia promptly moved her hand away from me, she appeared to be concealing her emotions. Oi, what happened to that female swordsman? I suddenly asked. She became a decoy in order to protect me. Suddenly, I gritted my back teeth. Reshia didn't say any more. How much time has passed? Since morning today, Chief. We had our hands full protecting the Chief's treasure. We can still make it. I patted Gi Ga's back to encourage him. We'll get them back, just wait. I left Reshia with those words, and I moved my body up as I shrieked. Giga, how many soldiers can be moved? 10, my chief. That's enough. And my sword? Here. As he pointed to a direction, there laid my sword, the iron second, large steel sword, smeared in blood. Anyone who lays his hand on my possession will not be forgiven. I take the steel sword, and wield it over my shoulder. Please wait, I will also go. I clicked my tongue in annoyance when I saw Reshia dusting off her robe's sleeves as she stood. You'll only get in the way. The one who healed you was me. The firm light of her amethyst eyes gleamed on me. Fine. Giga, protect Reshia. Whenever anyone's injured, bring them over to her. As you command. Let's go. Skill, acquired. Volume 1, Chapter 13. Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 99, Class, Noble, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death. The attack of the Orc Horde. I let my guard down after settling the issue of the orcs living in the area. The threat of an orc horde was far greater than I'd expected. The number of orcs that attacked the village was 6. Excluding Giga who ran to protect me, all the other orcs have been scattered, and their whereabouts are unknown. I headed towards the village with Giga while I had him tell me what happened, putting together the information we have as we went. What bad luck. I know I was knocked out, but still. No, this all really just boils down to how I'm not yet in a situation where I can let my guard down and fight to my limits. I shudder at how I could have died while I was asleep. Anyway, my subordinates shouldn't fight needlessly until they're able to fight the orcs by themselves. So if there's one thing fortunate, it's that I'm now at a level where I can deal with the orcs. Currently, my subordinates number 10 plus Giga. And then, there's Reshia who tagged along to save the female swordsman. We're only this few, and yet we're facing them head-on. What a reckless plan. Giga, at times like this, being a little tricky is needed. So I called over the former leader of the village, Giga. Move ahead of us, and get the attention of the orcs. Then lead them to the hunting grounds. Okay. Regarding the orcs' movement patterns, they're somewhat similar to goblins in the sense that they move according to their desires. First, they'll take what they like, then they'll eat to fill their stomachs, and then they'll satisfy whatever desires they have left. So there's a high possibility that the orcs are still within that village. You should be able to buy some time with traps. Don't try to recklessly hunt them. I shall buy time. Oh, and running's fine too. The orc leader won't chase down Giga's group, no. Instead, the ones weaker and dumber, in other words, the lesser ones are the ones who'll be chasing Giga's group. Therefore, victory should be attainable, provided we're able to split the orcs as planned. Without saying anything, Giga nodded. And at the vanguard of his horde, he ran. Guru. At the rise of his raging voice, he led the 4 goblins into the village. The rest of you. Go pick up stones and hide at the northern gate. After I gave orders to the rest of the goblins, I called out to Giga and Reshia. As for us, we're heading to the southern gate. Then, with the great sword on my shoulder, I declared to myself, I will take it back. All of it. At the stirrings of war, the northern wind blew, and the branches swayed. Within the village of the goblins, inside that partial enclosure of crumbling fences, were the orcs, eating. Seeing as how there are only 3 orcs, Gi-gu must have succeeded. If he had failed, then I would have had to use Reshia and Giga as decoys. That's one of the reasons why we're here at the southern gate. But since Gi-gu has succeeded, there won't be a need for that anymore. All that's left now is to focus on these 3 orcs. As I looked on at that small group, I noticed that one of the orcs wielded a long spear, and wore a necklace of fangs around its neck. It was clearly different from the other orcs. As I looked at it, I focused my eyes. And faintly, information appeared within my mind. Skill, activated. Race, Orc, level, 67, class, leader, Horde Chief, possessed skills, divine protection, none, so that wasn't a dream. The skill of that one-eyed red snake had activated. As I think that, I took a peek at the skill's description again. Skill, when the target's level is lower than yours, it will show the status of the target. Level, The condition for activation is quite limiting. If it was just number, then it wouldn't be so troublesome, but since it's restricted by level, I won't be able to use it much after evolving to a higher class. Fortunately though, I stopped at 99 and didn't evolve. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to use it right now. Caution will be necessary. But that's a matter for later. Right now, I'll just gratefully accept this fortuitous coincidence. Decisions are, after all, easier to make when your opponent's strengths are an open book. Thinking on the situation now, there are 3 orcs before me. The only point of concern is the leader who's wielding a long spear. Aside from that one, everyone else should be a normal one. If it's just this, then I should be able to manage by myself. Giga, Reshia, run past the center and head for the northern gate. By your will. Giga looked at Reshia, waiting for her reply. And Reshia nodded at my words. She might have her doubts, but right now, there's no other choice but to follow my command. Go. While the orcs had their backs turned, Giga and Reshia ran. And at the same time, I rushed towards the orcs that were still eating in a trance. 10 more steps. They still haven't noticed me. This is another reason why I went to the southern gate. The orcs have good nose, but from this direction, they shouldn't be able to detect me as fast. 7 more steps. At that range, I saw it. The corpses of my dead subordinates and the unmoving female swordsman. Unconsciously, I grinded my back teeth. Giuguaye. 4 more steps. But at that, the orcs finally noticed me, crying out in anger. But it's too late. They are all already within my range. I swung iron second, steel great sword, and brought it crashing down on an orc's head. The weight of the great sword plus the acceleration from the centrifugal force, this two put together, turned that one blow into a deadly force, easily crushing the head of one of the orc leader's followers. With the follow-up blow, I aimed for the leader, but as expected, it was able to use its spear as a shield, and was able to get some distance. Pujue. Gue. It was maddened by rage. But, do you really think I would lose to you when it comes to my fury? Pay for the crimes you've done. Gurue. At the cry of overpowering howl, one of the orc followers cowered. That one should be weaker than me. But. Suddenly, the orc leader attacked, interrupting my thoughts. That spear, having double the range of my great sword, came sweeping at my head. Missing, it swept against the empty expanse above my head. If your range is bigger than mine, then let's bring it into a melee. The moment that spear swung past me, I compressed my body, and bolted towards the orc. Pujue. Like a beast, I went on all fours. And concealing my great sword, I aimed for the orc leader's head. But then I saw it grinning. When I saw that ugly face that was perfect for the pig it was, smiling, my back froze. And I saw something from the corner of my eyes. Without even confirming what it was, I reflexively moved to meet it. At that instant, heat rushed up my leg as an attack hit me, and without giving me time to rest, the long spear descended on my head. But by rolling on the ground, I was somehow able to dodge it. Then I picked myself up, and made a run for the northern gate. I wanted to whittle down their strength a bit more, but it doesn't look like it's possible to do any more than this. Pujoye. An angry voice bellowed out from behind me. The orc that had seen blood, has gone full berserk. No longer can it be stopped by something half-baked. Like that I ran for the northern gate, leading the orcs whose blood has gone to their heads. The path beyond the northern gate is closed by the forest. Ever since people had stopped living in this village, almost no one's gone to the mountains. So naturally, the path leading to the mountain has worsened over time. Turning it into its current condition where half of the road's been corroded, thickets are crawling out from both sides, and small plants could be seen growing on the road. Bristling with trees, it was within that narrow road that I decided to use as the stage for my duel with the two orcs. With the goblins having already been deployed, these two are the only missing puzzles. Once I kill these two, everything will end. But of course, the opponent before me isn't weak enough to let me do that easily. I chose this place specifically because it was narrow. Being narrow, I expected the orc to have difficulty moving its long spear, but that expectation was completely blown away. The orc brought the spear above his head, and he spun it. By taking advantage of the effect of centrifugal force, that spear became a force to be reckoned, easily mowing down the surrounding small trees. In fact, the power contained within that spear was so strong that unless I wielded my great sword with both hands, and with all my power defended against it, I too would be blown away. If I was going to take it by surprise with a sudden attack, then I should have taken advantage of this. In my regret I showed a slight opening. The orc follower failed to miss that, and it attacked at that very moment, unleashing its long sword. At the same time, the orc leader's range kept me from making a move, effectively sealing my movements. Fucking pigs, don't use your heads. I grew more and more impatient. And with it, I slipped faster, falling into the enemy's pace. And although small, the countless wounds I received, caused blood to flow without rest, greatly weakening me. Goo. As I dodged the orc follower's long sword, the long spear came immediately after it, blowing me away. I can see the orc follower's face twisting into a grin as it swung its SW. Volume 1, Chapter 14. Counter-attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 99, Class, Noble, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death. Giga felt impatient as he watched the chief fight a difficult battle right before his eyes. But at the same time, he had to do the job he was ordered to do. Giga turned to glance at the human woman. And there she was, her face as expressionless as usual, watching the chief fight. Giga was ordered to protect this woman. But at the rate the fight is going, if he doesn't jump out now, then the chief will be devoured by the orcs. The chief prefers to be alone. Whenever there is danger, the one who goes is he. The chief never lets his subordinates do something reckless. To Giga, this kind of conduct was abnormal. When Giga was only a goblin, the leader of his horde then had red skin like he does now. Each day that leader would order the goblins to hunt for food. And the older goblins would take for themselves the best of the spoils. Power is everything. That was true even for the goblins. Giga never thought it to be strange. When he reaches the top, he too would do the same. But of course, there was dissatisfaction. And what was most unsatisfying was the matter regarding the females. The boss of the horde monopolized the females, keeping coitus with the females all to himself. The whole horde was unsatisfied. But even so, for Giga who was only a goblin, rebelling was not possible. But then one day, a goblin who would leave that horde appeared. Giga followed that goblin. Giga followed him since it seems like he'll allocate the females, and since the food was better compared to what it was then. There were many young goblins following that goblin. Young goblins that had circumstances similar to Giga. Eventually they found a place they could settle down in. But then, the orcs also came. The new leader said he would drive those orcs away. And so he gathered the 30 goblins that were with him, and he told them to surround the 3 orcs. But it failed. By the time Giga noticed it, the encirclement was broken, and Giga was sent flying, knocked unconscious. By the time he woke up, the leader was an unknown red goblin. Little by little, the horde acknowledged that goblin as their leader. Well, history will just repeat itself. This forest is just too harsh of an environment for goblins to live in. Like that, Giga followed after the new chief with his heart partly resigned. That leader taught Giga and the other goblins a new method to catch preys. A method that used traps to disable the preys. Giga doubted his eyes as he stared at the leader who thought this up, completely dumbfounded. Try it. At the chief's words, Giga timidly attempted to use the traps. And almost as if it was a lie, he managed to catch his prey easily. This leader is a good leader. In no time at all, Giga changed his opinion, and he recognized the new chief. Giga thought it was strange. The new leader actually allocated the food. He didn't monopolize the females. And he even gave them names. And more than anything, the leader saved his life when he became confused from the orcs' cries. What is this goblin? When Giga evolved, that question surfaced at the back of Giga's head. Compared to the time he was just a goblin, his ability to think had grown, and so he pondered the question. The answer he arrived to was a king. This goblin is the king who has come to save us. And so Giga, who had evolved into a goblin rare, bowed his head to the chief. With joy and absolute fidelity, he swore his loyalty. My king. Go, but that very chief right now was under pressure by the hateful orcs. The chief won't expose us to danger. But what will happen once the chief passes? The chief must be saved. No matter what. Woman. I, go. You, hide. Even though you were ordered to protect me. For, my king, I, go. King, save. You, hide. While he was talking, fire filled his body, spreading to every corner as if trying to set his body on fire. That erupting sensation was sudden. But it felt warm. With enough reason to stake his life, he felt strength fill his limbs with power. Giga jumped from the thickets, and struck the orc with his sword. Not good. I can't dodge. Giga. As I thought that, a black shadow bellowed out a howl from the corner of my eyes. Giga, who should have been hiding within the thicket, suddenly appeared, and went for the orc, wielding his iron spear. Didn't I leave Reshia's protection to him? King, save. I, save king. That iron spear was rusted, but at Giga's beast-like charge, it penetrated the orc's flesh, and both the orc and Giga fell to the ground. Sheet. Gripping my iron second, steel great sword, I moved my body in an attempt to save Giga, Pugaa. Maddened by fury, the orc leader swept his long spear horizontally. In response, I exerted all of my strength to block it. Ku. Pubyua. Gurua. The war cries of Giga and the orc resounded from behind me as I focused all my strength to dodge the incoming spear of the orc in front of me. If it hits, it'll be fatal. With the follower gone, I thought I'd manage somehow, but apparently my calculations were way off. This orc is undoubtedly strong. I have no choice but to recognize that fact. Support Giga, throw it. At the bellow of overpowering howl, I ordered the subordinate goblins to throw the stones. I have better chances of winning than Giga who is fighting the other orc behind me, so I don't have the luxury to have them support me. Skill, Swordsmanship C+ activated. It is now possible to parry the heavy attack of the spear. I need to get the orc inside my range. So go. Go deep into the range of the long spear. I drew close towards the orc as I meticulously parried an attack that was strong enough to fray my nerves. 3 more steps, and it'll enter my great sword's range. But at that thought, blood suddenly spilled, barely failing to receive the spear handle from above. My feet were hit directly. Goo, soundlessly, I groaned. And without being given time to rest, the spear that broke my feet crawled on the ground like a snake, and it came slashing again. That spear came from below, and with my great sword as a shield, I blocked it. But because of the pain from my broken feet, I wasn't able to absorb all of the impact, and I was sent flying all the way into the thickets. Fortunately, the thickets cushioned my fall, and I didn't fall on my back. But because of that blow, I lost sight of what was in front of me. Pyubue. Pyuguua. The orc that I was fighting leaped. But now it wasn't aiming for me but Giga. What the hell? Goblins should just follow my commands. It's enough for you goblins to do as I say. Don't try to save me. I won't accept that. Because once I do, I'm not confident that I'll be able to calmly accept your deaths. The long sword of the orc follower swung at Giga, cutting his arm. And the orc leader's long spear swept, sending both the iron spear and Giga flying. Giga's arms were twisted to the wrong direction, and as he lay on the ground, he coughed blood. That image burned itself on my eyes, and lit something within me. Gurua. At the explosion of overpowering howl, I bolted towards the orcs to stop them. Having carelessly gone close, I entered the range of the orc follower, and it brought its long sword down on me. I read the trajectory of that slash, and with a move that could only be considered by others as unthinkable, I went deeper into its range and received the brunt of its attack. My shoulder was burning. Having been deeply wounded, blue blood spurted from my wound. But this is exactly what I wanted. Now, tell me. Do you think you'll be forgiven? Gurua. Pugua. The orc tried to dig the sword even deeper, but I seized the blade of that long sword, grasping it within my bare hand. Skill, activated. Physical strength and agility 20% up. But, it's not enough. With that blade in my hand, I sunk it myself even deeper into my wound. Skill, stage 2 activated. Physical strength and agility 30% up, not yet. I lifted the iron second, steel great sword, that should be lifted with 2 hands with only 1 hand. Pubuu. I lifted it over the confused orc's head. And with my anger at its greatest, I swung it down. The great sword descended, and as it reached the orc's head, it smashed it, cutting down until half of its chest was severed. And then finishing it off, I sent it flying with a kick. Pubuu. After I'd kicked the orc away, the orc leader's enraged voice bellowed, and with it, came lunging his long spear. The swung spear easily crushed the left arm that held the orc follower's long sword. Skill, stage 3 activated. Physical strength and agility 40% up. Oh! The crumbling body, my consciousness barely kept together with anger, I ignored all of those as I stepped onward. And with that step, I swung the great sword, sending the orc leader's long spear, flying. The orc that could absolutely not lose in physical strength had just lost in a contest of physical prowess, leaving it confused. Buguruu. I held the great sword above my head, and in one straight line, I brought it down, crashing into the orc's head. But the foe before me was also an existence who led its horde. There was no way it would just stand still and watch its death. At the descent of that attack, the orc leader intersected its hands, and thrusted itself towards me. This sword is being swung 1. Handed. It can cut flesh, but it won't be able to crush the bone. Moreover, with the distance shortened, the damage received should also be mitigated. A good decision. The falling sword met halfway with the orc's hands. But, this attack is my muscles on my right arm that was swinging this sword down, suddenly enlarged abnormally. This wrath of mine cannot be stopped with something on that level. The sword, unstopping, continued unfazed, crushing the head of the orc. Blood spurted, and the orc crumbled to the ground. As I glanced sideward at the bloodied, unmoving orc, I pierced my sword into the ground. Reshia. Reshia fell zeal. As I called that name, I helped Giga up. Reshia pushed her way out of the thickets, and I brought Giga to her. Heal this one. Although her face was expressionless as usual, a curious expression slightly appeared on her face. Even though you're also heavily injured. This one takes priority. Hurry. Enduring both that gradually increasing impatience that felt like it was trying to burn my body, and that sensation welling from deep inside that felt like it was trying to tear me apart, I urged Reshia to heal Giga. I understand. Reshia looked like she couldn't fully comprehend it, but she still went to Giga and chanted her healing magic. Seeing that, I finally fell to my knees. Inside my body, something was trying to change me. That something that could also be called a chill, crawling beneath my skin, was coming from my guts, attempting to recreate me anew. It's hot. Steam came out from every part of my body. Gulp. I heard a surprised gulp, but I ignored it. As my eyes closed themselves. The shape of one's appearance is the shape of one's soul. I wonder why. I suddenly remembered the words of the annoying mother goddess. Level, because you have broken through level 100, class, will rise. Class, noble, horde chief. Class, duke, horde chief. Your level will also reset to 1. Because you have evolved to goblin duke, your abilities will also rise. Skill, will become because you have defeated the orc leader, your level will rise. From level 1 you will rise to level 10. Divine protection, the one that eyed red snake that was bestowed upon you by Altisia, the goddess of the underworld, will also transform inside your body. Skill, acquired. Items acquired. Long spear, long sword, fawn necklace. Author's note. I tried writing from the perspective of someone other than the protagonist. I plan to do this for several others too. Volume 1, Chapter 15. A new power. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 10, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altisia, Attributes, Darkness, Death. Passing over the lake, the gentle wind blew past me, a gentle caress. The image reflected on the lake's mirror-like surface was nothing like that of a goblin noble's tawny skin and a human adult's height. The image of a spiraled red snake on the arm, a lone horn reaching out to the heavens from the head, black fur much like that of a horse's mane reaching from the head until the hips, and that nostalgic sensation of having 5 fingers. Is this really a goblin? The image before me is enough to make me doubt that fact. But since my goblin subordinates have become more subservient, I shouldn't dwell on it too much. The changes truly are quite shocking though. Look, even my face has changed. That expression that once couldn't be thought of as anything but brimming with repugnance has now turned into this turtle-like apathy. A smirk surfaced at that thought. But then at that, a dreadful, brutish image reflected on the lake's surface. Don't say anything. One's appearance is the shape of one's soul, was it? Hogwash. Speaking of which, I've started to use the loincloths Lily's sewn. I've always been naked all this time, but lately, I feel like I've begun to regain my sense of shame. It might be because I've started talking to the humans again. After repelling the orc leader who had attacked the village, and after my class had gone up and after going through that unpleasant experience again, we went to the hunting grounds right outside the village to aid Giga. I could barely feel the weight of the iron second on my shoulder. After reaching the hunting grounds, I managed to find some good targets to test my body out. Those orcs that were trapped and unable to move were literally felled in one sweep. With my new strength, I can now tear through the orcs and crush even their bones easily. Having confirmed that is enough for now. Regarding the female swordsman, Lily, who was knocked out in the village, well, she's safe. Not that I care, but from the looks of things, the orcs prioritize food over women. Taking only the unconscious Lily into custody, I ordered the surviving goblins with overpowering howl to gather. Amongst the gathered goblins there's Giga who's been healed, Gigu who would obey despite his injuries, and then the rest of the other goblins. The numbers visibly decreased. The horde that once numbered 50 has gone down to 40. And the number that can fight, number to 30 at most. The injured goblins that can't move number to 7. Aside from the ones healed by Reshia, the number of subordinates that can be used to hunt has significantly decreased. The numbers could reach only this much even after including the surviving larvae and females as part of the war forces, showing just how much damage the orc attack did. And the number of females preparing the materials are 6. The one female goblin that's finally gotten pregnant has also been killed by the orcs. Most likely because she was pregnant, she couldn't run, and in the end she was killed. In order to prevent something like this from happening again, I should train them to run ahead of time. The captive humans are all safe. Although it's quite ironic, it seems the goblin prioritized protecting my treasures over their fellow females. As expected, a beast is a beast. Because they actually thought that I'd be happy hearing what they did. Be that as it may, the old goblin seems to have some intelligence. But even if you tell me that their sense of values is just different, it's no use. The captive humans are behaving better now than before the orc attack. Especially the female swordsman, Lily. Even though she kept snarling at me before, now she's so subservient to the point it feels like a lie. In fact, the annoying one now is Reshia. I think it's because she saw my level up. Now, every time she sees my face, she bombards me with question after question. What a hassle. The more I talk to her, the more it feels as if I could get swept by her charm. Because of skill, I'm able to keep it in check, but it's not easy. I once asked her if I wasn't scary, and she just looked at me blankly and shook her head. Apparently, because I've already put a lot of thought into things regarding her and the others, she doesn't think I'll do anything bad. After all, I've already made Lily and the other male humans so, and Reshia's been assigned to healing duty. So there's no other way left for me but to keep on going like this. Right now, the power I have is still too weak to encroach into the territory of humans. So I won't have any choice for a while but to continue to increase my power like this. Afterwards, I went to check my new skills. Skill, the number of subordinates you can lead will increase greatly. Charm towards the same race will increase greatly. Focusing my will, I checked the new skills I've acquired. Charm towards the same race will increase greatly. So only the charm towards the goblins will increase. Unless I misuse this skill, it should serve me well. I'm not fond of female goblins, so if I make a mistake, it could turn into a disaster though. A two-edged sword so to speak. Skill, swordsmanship most likely due to having 5 fingers, I've become able to do more delicate movements. As expected, having 5 fingers which I'm used to the most is best. And now it's possible for me to beat others down, and then immediately switch to slashing with my sword. Skill, it's now possible to manipulate magic according to one's attribute. In a sense, the true charm to living in a different world is the ability to use magic. I didn't want to meet Reshia, so I went to ask the old goblin to teach me magic. Considering its age, I thought it might know something, but as expected, a goblin's a goblin. Sheet. It couldn't be helped, so I ended up having to go ask Reshia. Teach me how to use magic. When those words entered Reshia's ears, she looked at me as if she'd just seen a dog talk. Of course, she tried to keep that from showing on her expression, but I can read even the slightest change in her expression. I can read even the slightest change in her expression. Seriously, how far have I fallen? Sheet. Magic is the world. That is to say that the gods cannot be replaced. And magic is the miraculous incarnation of that contract. Is what Reshia said. Somehow this conversation's turned really abstract. After that Reshia started to prattle endlessly while carrying a hint of pride. Wanting to just get it over with, I pestered her to just tell me what I want to know. So in other words, how do I use it? Having been interrupted in the middle of talking, Reshia scowled at me. Magic can be invocate with the use of an aria and an image. As for what to say, it's fine to speak freely what's in your mind. It would have been fine if you just said that from the start. What's the point of putting on airs? Image. When I thought of that, what floated to my mind was that friar's fireball and barrier. I wonder if it doesn't matter what attribute I have. Let my body be inviolable. Suddenly, darkness wrapped itself around my body. And an armor of darkness that dimmed my visage, capable of stopping my enemy's attacks, appeared. Oh. Surprisingly, I actually managed to pull it off. Contrast to my slightly surprised reaction, that woman who's always been poker-faced all this time, Reshia, suddenly forgot to keep her appearance up, and her face twisted, completely dumbfounded. Beside her was Lily, whose mouth was wide open, also shocked. Why are you able to do it? Reshia became serious all of the sudden as she inquired that while drawing near me. Well, it's because you taught me, obviously. Is what I wanted to say, but I decided to keep that Tsukomi at bay. How do I cancel this? Ignored, Reshia pouted, annoyed. Chant the aria of cancellation. As for the wording, do whatever you want. Just as she said, I recited the aria. Release. Seeing the darkness recede, I was satisfied. From now on, I should experiment with this. As I was thinking that, Reshia suddenly spoke up. Isn't this against the contract? What is? I'm only supposed to heal and talk with you. What do you want? I wish to bathe. Ha. I might have made a dumb expression, as Reshia repeated her words angrily. I said I want to bathe. I called Giga over, and had them escort her. There are too many things that need to be done. Level has increased. 10. 11. The buff has been cancelled. Author's notes. The audible loud laughter of a goddess seems like it should be added. It really is unfortunate that he couldn't become human, huh? There's no B.San, but hurry up and make him human. Abbreviated, eh. You want to know if he can become human? Well, that's a spoiler, so let's keep it a secret. Volume 1, Chapter 16. Tremors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 11, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Turn me into a blade, enchant. At that chant, the darkness wrapped around me moved itself to the sword. I'm hidden amongst thickets, watching my praise. When the magic finished casting, I immediately jumped out, and pursued the praise before me. My target, the herd of Iral deer. These praise were found by my goblin subordinates after I ordered them to look for some. And as for my target, it's the biggest one amongst the ones spotted today. Right now, there are around 30 deer drinking water from the lake and feeding on the grass. And these are all going to serve as my practice partners. With that thought, I took a step. But as soon as I stepped out of the thickets, they noticed my presence. Was it because of their instincts as beasts who grew up in the wild? Or was it just because my killing intent leaked out? I don't know, but as their ears perked up, all of their gazes focused onto me. Without flinching, I proudly took another step. Then they turned their back to me, and they began to run. But as soon as I took that step, I had already prepped myself to sprint at maximum speed. And in the blink of an eye, the running prey's back was before me. But then all of a sudden, the Irel deer stopped, and then turned right. The force of having sprinted at maximum speed weighed heavily on me. In doing that, I paused, and then turned, continuing to chase after my prey. As soon as it entered my range, I swung my enchanted iron second down. And in an instant, the deer was cut down. It was so fast that the deer wasn't even given a moment to utter a cry. Seeing that, I couldn't help but find myself dumbfounded. The resistance was so thin it was as if I just cut butter with knife. Amazing, while I was caught up in my fascination over the prowess of magic, the goblins seems to have already gotten used to hunting the Irel deer. Looks like the three-man cell's been more effective than expected. As soon as the larvae grow up, they're put in with experienced teams and instructed how to use traps. Because of this, it's become possible to acquire preys without hurting their quality. As a result, the efficiency of our hunts have increased, and the food situation's gotten better. Leading to an increase in the survival rate of the birth goblins, which then consequentially leads up to an increase in war potential. But even without that, I'd still want to have our bellies filled. After all, you can't fight with an empty stomach, right? All the more so since we get our provisions from hunting and not from vegetation. So I want to get some now while we can. It's a pity thought that smoking's the most we could do when it comes to preserving food, but I guess it'll all work out somehow. While I was up there in my own little world, thinking of all sorts of random things, I suddenly heard the death throes of a deer. Guruyuyu. Oh. And as my eyes moved towards the direction of that scream, I saw the goblin who killed it, transforming as it sat there on the ground with vapors coming out of its body. He's evolving. As I continued to watch the goblin's evolution, its skin turned red, and its muscles grew bigger. Its stiff expression also changed into a fiendish one. And as its evolution finished, its cries changed to that of a goblin rare. It might be because it's my first time seeing someone evolve that I couldn't help but stare at the new goblin rare. But then as I continued to stare at it, some text suddenly appeared within my mind. Race, Goblin, Level, 1, Class, Rare, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, None, Attributes, None. Looks like the skill has activated. Moreover, from the looks of things, apparently it doesn't work on just my enemies, but also on my allies. That's unexpected. But really, I shouldn't have assumed it to be so in the first place. Sigh. I just feel like hitting myself with a stone right now for thinking it could only work on my opponents without even confirming it. That aside, I wonder if I should end the hunt right here and now, and start a meeting. It's that striking while the iron's hot. But, wait. My level right now is only 11, and skill activates based on level conditions. No, I shouldn't be impatient. Right now the focus should be on hunting for provisions. Right, I shouldn't change the order and focus on gathering food first. Chief, hearing a voice call out to me, I snap out of my thoughts. Oh, come to think of it, someone's managed to evolve. I need to give it a name. I name you Gigi. When I granted the kneeling goblin a name, it bowed to me deeply several times as if it had just received something divine. Incidentally, I took the chance to take a look at Gigi's skill. Beast Tamer. When it was still a goblin, the most it could manage were a few dogs. Now that it's evolved into a goblin rare, its ability to control beasts should have increased an appropriate amount. I'm looking forward to see just how much it can bolster our war potential. After that, time passed, and when we got 2 Irel deer and 3 armor rabbits, we ended the day's hunt, and returned to the village. When I returned to the village, I made my subordinate goblins sit in order. Right now, I'm going to interview them. What I want to get from this is each and every goblin's aptitudes, as well as the skills that can be used to increase our war potential. Once I know what useful skills they have, I'm going to train it by having them use it more frequently. But unfortunately, skill, wouldn't work for more than half of them. And amongst the goblins I've looked into, the only ones that have something that could become a part of our war potential was at most 2. With the exclusion of GI, the number really was small. How disappointing. But then again, there's no way it would have gone well on the first try. So for now, I should just focus on increasing my level in order to be able to determine the other goblins' aptitude as well. And if ever I come to find that they have a useful skill, I should make them use it as much as possible every time we hunt in order to harness it. Right, let's go with this. Oh, incidentally, I also couldn't see into the statuses of the other goblin raiders, the former leader Gi Gu and the spear-wielding Gi Ga. I'm quite curious about this too status, but I guess it can't be helped for now. Right, I shouldn't pester for things that I don't have, and just make use of whatever's available. Talking with Reshia's almost become a daily thing, but at least now I've started to be able to drag information out of her. The only way for this to happen was to either win her trust or get her used to it, so in a sense it's partly thanks to the orc's attack that my impression with her has gone up so much. Seriously, who would have thought those orcs attacking would actually do some good? They helped me evolve, they became food for my subordinates, and they became the key to help me to get the information I want. Fuckers. Honestly, I'm not that happy about it, but it's true, so. Still, even if the loss wasn't that high. Fuck. But still. What's usable is usable, and I should make use of what's available to me. Even if that thing is something that came at the cost of my subordinates' lives. Moreover, this is also a form of memorial service for them. No, it's not just that. If I don't use it, I'll be wasting their deaths. So in order for that not to happen, I need to do this. Fuck. What the fuck am I thinking anyway? They're pieces. Mere pieces on a chessboard. They're monsters. Fuck. What am I thinking? Even though I should be well aware that careless empathy will only bring with it destruction. Are you listening? Reshia's voice knocked me awake. Sheet. Focus. Sorry, I was thinking about something. If you're not in the mood, then why should we even continue? No, that'll be a bit troubling. Especially since we're at a good part now. How dare you say something like that, when the one who wasn't listening was you? I'll let you take a bath every 2 days. Oh. That's not bad. But since we're on the topic, I'd also like to request permission for Chinos and Mattis to take a bath as well. Fine, I thought. Looks like this girl's talent doesn't end just with her healing alone. With that talent of hers to bargain, she could probably become a formidable merchant. Fine, but let's move the time. At the same time, I'll give you some escorts. Very well. Then, let's continue. What I wanted to learn from Reshia even at the cost of giving in, was geography. How far is the nearest human habitant? What is the population of the nearest human settlement? How many soldiers do they have? Their country. Their literature. Their overall strength. Their relationship with other countries. And what do they know about this forest? Every day, I would come to her and listen to her talk about such things. But of course, I didn't blindly believe everything she told me. After which, for the first time, I left the hunting grounds to Gi Gu and the rest of the goblin raiders while I went out to explore alone. Come to think of it, it's been 10 days since I've caught Reshia, so it wouldn't be strange for the humans to start looking for her soon. By exploring the unexplored areas of the forest alone, I won't only be exploring, but also increasing my level. So in a sense, I'll be killing 2 birds in 1 stone. But of course, it's also quite dangerous. Even if I have become a goblin duke, at most my status is only comparable to that of a giant spider's. The only difference is that my head's a little better, and I can use skills and magic. But as for whether those 3 alone can make a huge difference in my fighting potential, I don't know. In fact, there's most likely someone amongst the humans in this forest who wouldn't even bother looking at my skills and magic. For example, if there was a being who had a skill that could kill me in one hit, then I wouldn't even have the chance to activate. Or perhaps a strange, powerful weapon that I've never seen before. If there's such a thing as that, then won't activate either. If ever I happened upon something like that, there's no guarantee of me surviving. But despite that, despite the feelings of tension running up my back, I continued deep into the forest. Then along the way, I met 3 orcs. And my mouth twisted into the shape of a crescent moon. An enemy. There's an enemy. Turn me into a blade, enchant. The dread of losing my life hung over me. The excitement that was no different from trembling, wrapped around me. As the orcs noticed me, they moved towards me. Then from the deepest pits of my entrails came a scream, the bellowing excited roar of a maddened soul. Gurua. With my gaze fixed upon the mighty, I took a step. Since your attributes are darkness and death, magic casted by you will be black magic. Since you are using black magic, your mind will be affected. Skill, acquired. Because of skill, you will slowly lose your mind. Volume 1, Chapter 17. Beast Subordinate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 11, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Skill, Invocate. Your sight will be dyed in red. I dodged the approaching spear without any effort. With a step, I close in on the orc. And with a thrust from the enchanted iron second, the orc's stomach was pierced. Gurua, screamed the orc. With iron second still stuck, pierced into the orc's body, I swung it up. As that great steel sword rose, blood and guts scattered about in the air, and a literal rain of blood descended. The falling rain of blood coupled with my resounding laughter, painted a dreadful, gruesome scene. Why? Why am I so excited? The cowering visage of the orcs filled me with jubilance. And my face twisted into a wicked smile of sadism. Kohahaha. Die. 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 I chased after the orc. It showed me its back. I swung my sword down, and its screams resounded. With its back gouged out, it fell to the ground. And mercilessly, I crushed its head under the weight of my foot. Turning my head, I went off for the last orc. When I got close enough, I cut off its leg. Then I decapitated its shoulder, sending that piece flying with a fountain of blood in its trail. As I crushed its head with my grip, a raging roar bellowed out from the pits of my guts. Led by the voice within me, I had slaughtered a massacre, leaving the land dyed in red blood. No. What am I doing? Skill, invocate. The effect on your mind from the skill will be mitigated. With my senses back, I looked around me. The surrounding area was a mess. No matter what you say, that exhibition was too unsightly. To think that this is what happens when I get a little bit of power. How disgraceful, I thought as I clicked my tongue. Using my heightened hearing, I searched for a waterside. Leaving the corpses here is fine, right? As for the meat of the orc, I'll just get what I need. Besides, there's something I want to see. Even something small would have been fine as long as I'm able to fit in, so when I saw a waterfall, I immediately entered it. Inside the water lake, I cooled my seething head, and I washed off the blood from my body. When the stench of the orc's flesh mostly left my body, I went back to the place where I had previously slaughtered the orcs. Looking at it now, I can't help but sigh. I'm well aware that the one responsible for this is me, but this is really just too much. Still though, since I've already done it, I should at least make the most out of it. So with that, I gathered the corpses to fish for scavengers while I hid somewhere nearby. Then a few hours passed, and I began to worry as to whether it was a waste of time hiding behind the thickets, fishing for scavengers, or not. But fortunately, at that moment, it came. Its back was hunched, its face was that of a beast, and in its hand was a beast's fawn. It walked like a man, and behind it swayed a tail. Its stature was slightly smaller than that of a goblin. And its fur was colored brown. I wondered to myself whether I've seen it before from somewhere, but when I looked at my own skin, I shook my head, and concluded that it must have just been my imagination. There are 5 of them. These things are called kobolds, and they are supposedly weaker than goblins. They do possess some intelligence, however. Dashing out from the thickets, I caught one of the kobolds. When the other kobolds saw that, they immediately dispersed. "Can you talk?" I asked. With the scruff of its neck caught under the grip of my hands, I even went as far to bring it right before my face, but it just bared its fangs against me. Maybe it's not smart after all. I cut off a portion of the orc corpse's flesh and inserted it into the kobold's mouth. As useless as it was, it just chewed on the flesh. Thinking I had just wasted my time, I tossed the kobold to the ground, and went off to search again. After walking for a bit, I looked behind me. There I saw that the kobold was still following me. You, begged the kobold as it made a face that seemingly looked like it really wanted something. Despite supposedly being a dog that had just snarled at me moments ago, drool dribbled out of the corners of its mouth as if saying, "I'm hungry." It looked back on the corpse, and then it looked back up at me again. That questioning gaze seemed to be half-filled with the anticipation of being fed. You, begged the kobold again. For the record, the one who begged a while ago was the kobold and not me, okay? You know, just in case. I could have just chased it away, but being troubled, I threw it a slice of orc meat instead. Like a trained dog, the kobold ran after the slice of orc meat, and as soon as it got it, it went back to my side. "And what are you planning to do by coming back to me?" It looked like trouble, so I tried to shoo it away with my hand. Somehow, it apparently misunderstood the sign, and instead it nodded at me, then it stuffed its cheeks full with the meat I'd just thrown it. It'd be troublesome if it continued to follow me around like this, so I went ahead and continued my search. But in order to lure out the kobolds, I continued to wait somewhere near the orcs' corpses until the clock struck nighttime. Thinking that it's almost time to head back home, I began to make way for the village. But then I heard footsteps aside from mine echoing throughout the forest. When I turned to look behind me, I saw the kobold looking up to me. Seeing me turn my head, it became curious, and it also turned its head to look behind it. "No, it's you. Why are you following me?" I asked. The kobold tilted its head in response. "Why are you making a strange face?" "Strong," replied the kobold as it pointed its finger at me. "Bring me," it continued, this time pointing to itself. With my mind already exhausted, I didn't feel like dealing with it anymore, and I just quietly continued to walk to the village like that. The goblins and people of the village sent me curious gazes as they watched the kobold follow me with its unsteady steps. Fortunately, they didn't ask anything. "Oh, you've brought back something interesting with you," commented Reshia when she saw the kobold. No one but Reshia anyway. Although for some reason her gaze looked unsatisfied as she looked at the kobold swaying its tail as it sat there under my feet. "Whatever," I nonchalantly reply. "It's a pain to explain." "I want a pet too," said Reshia. Exactly what does Reshia think of this displeasing face of mine? "Where do you place the kobolds amongst your people?" I asked. At that, the usual discussion began. Although Reshia considers me and other monsters to be in one group, she differentiates between us and the monsters who captured her and the other humans. That is to say that she recognizes us. With that as the topic of conversation, we passed the time talking for nearly an hour. During that time, the kobold stretched itself on my feet as it made itself at home. Seeing that, I quietly thought to myself, "Bastard, you actually plan on staying." Kobold has been subordinated. Your level has risen. 11 equals 12. Author's note. It seems that there's a legend that says that kobolds and goblins are the same thing. I'm purposely writing them as 2 different monsters, however. I suppose it could be considered as a therapeutic sort of monster. If you could see it in real life, you might just get charmed. Volume 1, Chapter 18. Charm of the Saint. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 12, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, Kobold, LV9. I caught the kobold thinking it would have intelligence, and was even planning to have it as a part of my main force. But who would have thought that my expectations would be so far from the truth? Right now, that supposedly intelligent being that should have become a part of my main force is at my feet, grooming itself with its tongue. No matter which way you spin it, this is unarguably a pet. And watching it yawn as it scratches its face with its fong just makes me want to throw a tsukomi at it and ask, "Are you an old man?" On my way back, around a half-day's distance on Goblin foot, I've already mostly finished my search after having walked to every direction from the village. And in my search, I've come to understand that there are currently no monsters in the surrounding area that could pose a threat to us. Roughly speaking, the distribution goes like this. At the east of the village, deduced based on the rising of the sun, resides the kobolds. At the north is where the spear deer are. While in between the north and the east is the lake. And then as for the south, that's where the triple head and the triple boar live. The only problem remaining is the west. According to Reshia's group, this forest is known as the Forest of Darkness. The boundary of human life lies north from the east of the forest. The south and the west are untouched. There are no problems regarding the south. There are neither any dens in which a powerful beast might dwell in, nor are there any traces of a village. There were no dangers at all whether it was in my search or when I used my goblins to hunt. Now, the reason I find the west to be a problem is because the orcs have mostly been coming from the west. The orcs generally form groups of either 3, when small, or 8, when big. They're always moving because they don't have a permanent home. They look for a place, settle down, then after eating everything, they move again and repeat the same thing. Just like grasshoppers. Not that I have any intentions of talking about the pros and cons of their way of living, mind you. The only thing that matters is that I know how they live their lives. Now, the problem is why they're coming from the west. According to the humans, the deeper into the forest, the stronger the monster. So there are two possibilities. Either the orcs are being driven away by something frighteningly strong, or the orcs have many villages. Regardless, the threat's from the west. Troubled, I consulted the elder goblin about my thoughts. And I asked him whether it'd be possible to merge with the other goblin villages once we track them down. My current pieces number 3 goblin rares, 32 male goblins that can fight, and 9 goblins that can't. It's a rather worrying number. Thinking back to it, I once asked whether there was a king amongst the goblins or not. And if I recall correctly, there should be no unifying leader but rather, 4 main groups. So if each group had 30 goblins, then that would total to 120. If I'm able to take all of that, then, it wouldn't be such a bad army now, would it? I want information regarding the goblin villages that are similar to ours. If possible, their chief as well, I said. That I explained the circumstances to the old goblin. And in response, the old goblin replied with a frown. My king, it will do us no good to be hasty. To begin with, the east isn't even under our control yet, replied the old goblin. Hearing him point out a sore spot, I unconsciously knit my eyebrows. Certainly, I can't just ignore the humans. How long will it take before those bastards reach this village? I need to have a precise answer to that, otherwise I might just make a blunder. And if I do, then the only future left for this village is destruction. Especially since I have Reshia with me. It's definitely not far-fetched to believe that they're putting together a unit to bring her back. But at the same time, if I keep worrying over something like that, then I'll never be able to make my move. But the thing is, it's difficult to predict when the humans will make their move. In fact, I can't even ascertain how much Reshia's group is worth to the humans. So considering my priorities, the only path I have left to me is to deal with the humans. Oi, I said, calling out to the kobold at my feet. You are to let me know when the humans enter the forest. Understood. A curious expression appeared on the kobold, then as it barked out a woof, it wagged its tail. At that, I gave it some meat. And as soon as it took it into its mouth, it ran away at full speed. When humans come, I let you know, said the kobold. I don't know how trustworthy that kobold is, but it's better than nothing. But just in case, I better spread some goblins to guard the area. With this, the east should be fine for now. After this, I should increase the number of goblins at the eastern hunting grounds. The east should be fine now, right? I asked the old goblin. To which in response, the old goblin unwillingly nodded. Then let us talk. With those words I persuaded the old goblin to give me the information I wanted. And from it, I found out that our village is apparently one of the smallest amongst the goblin villages. It would seem that our village's survival so far has mostly been due to good luck. Then again, I've always had a feeling that was the case. But while that may be true, that doesn't mean that the other groups will be able to break through either. Because if there was such a group, then there should be another one like me who would attempt to gather the nearby villages and increase their power. The fact that there's no such thing just goes to mean that there's no group that sticks out from the crowd. Now, the closest group to us has about 30 goblins as its fighting force. It should only take us around a day on foot. At the same time, they appear to be living in a sturdy cave. And their chief is only a goblin rare. Unfortunately though, this information isn't that reliable as it's only based on the old goblin's memory. As for why knows it, apparently his father was a mutual goblin rare and the chief of this village 3 generations ago. A father, huh? Well, in any case, this isn't such a bad deal for our first invasion. The lack of information is a bit troubling, but there's not much time left, so this'll have to do. Gi, begin the preparations. We'll take 10 goblins with us, while Giga will defend the village in our absence. After I ordered my subordinates. I ordered the old goblin to guide us. The old goblin hesitated a bit, so I threatened it. After which, we then had to prepare our food supplies before moving out. We took some raw meat, and smoked it in a small shed. I mobilized what little knowledge I had, and then left the meat for a few hours. The result? Burned. Where did I go wrong? At the depths of my despair, a voice came. What are you doing? It asked. That voice came from a curious Reshia who was in a nearby shed. It would appear that she's quite excited, but in contrast to that vigor of hers, I replied with barely any, saying, I want to make some preserved meat. What for? She asked. I needed to destroy a different village, I replied. Now I don't know what she thought of my words, but she suddenly clapped her hands, and then suggested, please add some fruits to our meal. I know, how about some keju for everyone? Apparently, this woman's tougher than she looks. As for that keju, it's supposedly a fruit that grows on trees, and turns red when ripe. It's kind of like an apple. Alright, I'll have it ready from this day's lunch onwards, I agreed. Goblins love meat. The goblins with the skill can eat relatively anything, but they still love meat. They can eat leaves, they can eat roots, and even fruits. But they still prefer meat. That's why we don't really have much of that keju gathered. Or at least as long as I don't order them to anyway, but... Chinos, called Reshia. What does the saint require of me? Replied Chinos. Apparently he wants to smoke some meat. Would you mind teaching him how to? Asked Reshia. If that is the request of the saint, then, replied Chinos as he turned his quivering gaze at me. But without another question, he began to explain. After hearing his explanation, I then proceeded to order my subordinates according to his instructions, and lit a flame in the same way. The result: a success. Why? I asked. A sense of disappointment filled my heart as I persistently asked the quivering chinos, why? And as it turns out, the secret was in the strength of the fire. Maybe it also has something to do with his skill, I thought. But without pursing the matter any further, I just gave up and rewarded chinos with rabbit meat. After all, there's a problem of whether or not the goblins would be able to recreate something so subtle like that. The goblin rares and the goblin nobles might be able to, but it's too big of a hit to our forces to tie down such important pieces with a menial task like that. Besides, if humans can do it, then why not just leave it to them, right? Please don't forget your promise, okay, reminded Reshia cheekily. Hearing that, I nodded. But almost immediately after, I was startled, and couldn't help but turn back to look at her. Why? Because Reshia spoke to me as soon as I finished thinking. No way, right? And not only did she take into consideration the odds of me using the food supply to attack a human settlement, she's even made the humans indispensable. Did she really calculate this far? Right now, what I'm feeling from that girl is not that same girl who was just asking for better food, but rather the wisdom of a higher being, a saint. It's past lunch already. I'll add the keiju starting with supper. Intriguing. Very intriguing. To what extent is she Reshia? To what extent is she the saint? In the same vein, to what extent am I a man? To what extent am I a monster? Suddenly, a desire wishing to ascertain that bloomed from within me. Regardless of whether it's because of her charm or not, this formidable emotion is simply far too strong for me to resist. The believer of the healing goddess, Zenobia, has manifested her skill. Your mind will be slightly affected. It will be difficult for you to harm the saint. Volume 1, Chapter 19. Grey Wolf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Level, 12, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, Kobold, LV9, Abnormal Status. It took us around a day of walking west before we finally found a cave. That cave had an extremely narrow entrance, making it look like nothing but a crack in a giant piece of rock. But interestingly enough, its interior is actually quite wide. Gi. A large number of goblins were hanging out by the entrance of the cave. It should be fine though, as I highly doubt that they'd attack. Gi, I said, calling out to the two goblins. Go inside, and ask their chief to come out. Understood, replied the two. Then from the goblins I've brought with me, I picked 8 more and made them go as well. As for the remaining 2 goblins, I had them patrol and hunt some prey while we waited for the others to return. I could have gone to the cave myself, but I didn't because of the cave's entrance. It's too narrow. In fact, it's so narrow that a goblin rare is about all that could fit. Even a goblin noble who is only one size bigger would find itself hard-pressed to try and pass through. What more someone like me who is pretty much a walking mass of rock? I'd have to whittle myself with something first if I wanted to pass through that. But that'd be stupid and inefficient, so instead of doing something so pointless, I sent the 2 to ask their chief to come out instead. Besides, there shouldn't be anything to worry about since Giga possesses the skill. With that skill he's able to take a triple boar along. It's also partially due to his limits that we brought that thing, but surprisingly, it's actually proven to be quite the boon to us. In a narrow cave like that, who'd be able to dodge the triple boar? So with that, I was able to patiently wait for them without any worries. And after some time of waiting, voices reminiscent of jeering reached my ears. It would appear that they've arrived, muttered the old goblin. At his words, I turned my head, and there, a goblin rare stood in between Gi and Gi. Are you the chief of this horde? I asked as I looked down on it, exuding an aura of dignity. On your knees, yelled Gi as he forcibly made the goblin rare kneel. While Gi was manhandling the goblin, I couldn't help but catch something quite curious. The goblin rare in front of me seems to be severely scarred. Some, old. Some, new. And some were even fresh. Answer the king's question, pestered Gi. I am indeed the chief of this horde, said the goblin proudly as it courageously gazed at me. Its firm resolve could be visibly seen reflected on its eyes. Although only a little, I suddenly found interest for this goblin sprout from within me. And to think I was actually thinking of just lopping its head off. What kind of goblin is the chief of this horde? I asked. Having had a change of heart, I decided to approach things a bit differently. A friendly goblin we have known for generations. He is gentle. His feelings of camaraderie are strong even amongst goblins and, before the old goblin could prattle on, I interjected, saying, in other words, the old goblin does not want to kill this goblin. This goblin is exceptional, I continued. Yes, that's exactly it, agreed the old goblin. I glanced at the goblin rare once again, and then said, become my subordinate. I don't need unnecessary words. Whether you reply with a yes, or whether you reply with a no. That is everything to me. Under the condition that you save the goblins under me, bargained the goblin. Without any hesitation, I nodded at the goblin rare who had its head still bowed on the ground. Save, huh? Come to think of it, all of the subordinates of this goblin rare are thin all over. In fact, even this goblin rare itself is thin. I'll give you food, I said. Then along with those words, I had the food we smoked prior to coming here along with the praise we had hunted along the way brought out, showing it off to the goblin rare and its horde. And I'll even give you a name, I added. Dumbfounded, the goblin rare could only stare at the food before it. Then when I called out to it, it looked up to me in surprise with its mouth still hanging. I name you Gi. After this, leave this cave and come live in my village, I ordered. At those words, Gi prostrated itself before me. Satisfied, I began to walk out of the village. But at that moment, Gi suddenly spoke. Ah, chief. Please wait, said Gi as it quickly followed after me. At that, I turned back to it. Then with a stiff posture it began to talk about the dangers of this land. Apparently there is a dangerous beast living in this part of the forest. And according to the old goblin, it's known as the Grey Wolf. With a number of subordinates under it, it's reputed as the forest's hunter. Then Gi continued in fear, mentioning that the Grey Wolf eats enough food to feed its pack. Even going as far as to eat its own kind. Curious however is that for some reason we still haven't come across that ferocious beast. But if that beast is really around, then wouldn't that mean that we wouldn't be able to go back to the village unless we deal with it first? The food I gave them won't last long either. I need to do something about that beast or I won't be able to leave. Then in that case, I just have to kill it, right? At that bold proclamation, I ordered Gi to bring goblins that can fight. At the same time, I ordered Gi and Gi to stand guard. Counting our forces, the goblins that can fight from Gi total to 28. With my own goblins, that numbers to 38. The number of goblins that can't fight is 20. And we need to protect all 20 goblins from the beasts while we move out. After thinking for a bit, I decided to divide the horde into 4 squads. Gi will be leading the main unit. Being the most appropriate person for the job, I decided to leave to it the duty of protecting the group that can't fight while they evacuate to my village. Then escorting the main unit is Gi's group who will be there protecting their flanks. Having originally come from my village, the goblins in Gi's squad excel at rock throwing and covering for others. Should the Grey Wolf come to attack, then Gi's squad will hold them off while the main unit escapes ahead. Thirdly, GI's Beast Warrior Squad will be leading the whole horde. The beasts' noses are good, so with them leading, they should be able to detect the foes from a distance. And finally, the last squad will be led by me. Stopping the wolves will be my duty. With the strategy decided, I distributed the goblins to their respective squads. Then afterwards, I immediately ordered Go to have everyone prepare for departure. Right, we can't afford to waste even one of these goblins. It will take us around a day of walking to get to my village from the cave. Unlike humans, the goblins don't have any valuable possessions, so if it weren't for the differences between the warriors and the non-combatants, then we would be able to get to the village in only one day. In fact, we didn't even bring any unnecessary food with us either, as it's imperative that we get to the village as soon as possible. The one leading is GI's Beast Warrior Squad. His triple boars and his wild dogs lead the way, using their senses to ascertain that the path is safe. And from behind that squad followed Go's squad. And protecting the flanks is Goo, who paid careful attention to its surroundings as they gathered food along the way. Goo is quite the honest goblin, so Goo made sure to get the gathered food distributed to the main unit. As for me, I was walking at the very back, paying careful attention to the surroundings as I followed the rest of the group. There are only 5 goblins around me, but should the worst case happen, then these guys might have to sacrifice themselves in order to thwart the wolves' pursuit. Then halfway through our path, Gi contacted me. Apparently, the beasts won't proceed any further. Is it coming? Go, take the rest of your squad with you and go ahead. At those words, the squad in front became noisy. With the main unit being that noisy, it would normally be the center of attention, but Go, escort the main unit. But if my prediction is correct, then you will. As a great howl resounded from the back, I unsheathed Iron Second, and firmly wielded it in my hands. Then with its pack following from behind, the Grey Wolf appeared. Volume 1, Chapter 20. Grey Wolf 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Race, Goblin, Level, 12, Class, Duke, Horde Chief, Possessed Skills, Divine Protection, Goddess of the Underworld, Altesia, Attributes, Darkness, Death, Subordinate Beasts, Kobold, LV9, Abnormal Status. The Grey Wolf was 2 meters long, making it bigger than me. Scars could be seen here and there on its grey fur. But those scars did not give the image of weakness, instead it exuded an aura of experience. Wolves with a small build and brown fur followed the Grey Wolf. There were 20 of them, but in contrast to the fearsomeness of that Grey Wolf, those wolves were but fodder. Now, although we might be inside a forest, it's not as if there are trees abound everywhere equally. There are also some places where the trees are less dense, and some areas that are plains. And the Grey Wolf chose the plains, an area with little trees, for their hunt. I need to buy time for Goo and the others until they're able to find a way out, and run back to the village. As I thought that to myself, I looked on at the approaching threat. I have never fought with a Grey Wolf before, but I know, that thing is without a doubt formidable. Yet despite that, I couldn't help but smile. Strong. Formidable. What's that got to do with me? A place like this isn't fit to be my grave. At those thoughts, I raised my voice, and ordered the goblins, I will hold the rear. Now, run. At my voice, the goblins ran with the escorts. The attacking wolves formed a line as they began to close in, their fangs ready to strike from a multitude of angles. Let my body be inviolable, shield, I chanted. I braced myself for the oncoming fight, and casted a shield over my body, keeping the damage to the absolute minimum. Just dodging won't be good enough in this fight. Even if I were to dodge all of their attacks, that won't be good enough to create an opening for a counterattack. One of the wolves went after my legs from my lower right. Another tried to seal my arms from the opposite side. And from behind me, another leaped, aiming for my neck. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. A speed at which Iron Second couldn't possibly hope to reach. The small stature of the wolves didn't help, as the colossal size of my sword in contrast to their dwarf stature left me in an uncomfortable position. Yet despite that, I swung my sword. With an overbearing strength that could summon winds, I swung my sword. Iron Second flashed, and the wolves before me were cut in halves. The sword completed its swing, but it rested not. Following the trajectory it had come from, the sword returned, and in its path, it blew the remaining frightened wolf away, sending it into the air. The skill had shown its worth. My dignity in full display, I bellowed out an earth-shattering howl, activating the skill. Gurua. With it, my foes stopped in their tracks, unable to move. Now, what will you do? The gray wolf before me remained unperturbed. Perhaps it's planning to leave the hunt solely to its subordinate wolves without lifting a finger, but I can't have that. Of course, killing all of these wolves isn't a problem for me, but that's not the problem. The problem is that there's a possibility that the wolves might just ignore me, head straight for the main unit instead, and kill the non-combatants one after another. That result is unacceptable. Which is precisely why I must show my strength, and keep them pinned here. When their leader comes to understand that it's not possible to defeat me unless it personally comes to fight, then it will make its move. And once it does, its subordinates will stay in order to protect it. And as expected, regardless of how composed that Grey Wolf was, it still took a step forward from its pack. Oh. So you feel like doing it? The subordinate wolves were already that fast. What more this Grey Wolf? I'll have to pay careful attention, and make sure to accurately measure the distance between us. Bno them you. At the Grey Wolf's howl, its body turned into a blur. Before I knew it, my body was in midair. A blow had hit me from the side, sending me into the air into a flip, fast. Although it got me, thanks to the shield I casted earlier, I didn't receive any fatal damage. Only, my chances of winning had just gotten dimmer. How am I supposed to fight against something that's so fast I can't see it? No, right now, my focus isn't to kill it, but to buy time. I shouldn't. As I was ruminating on the situation, the wolf turned into a blur again. I felt a blow land on me, and I was sent into the air again. Then the Grey Wolf calmly closed in on me. Not good. At this rate, I'm going to lose. Who is the hunter? Who is the hunted? At that moment, the Grey Wolf had clearly answered that question. With a slash from its long sword, Gi Gu slayed the brown wolf before it. Then it looked behind. Gi Gu's revered chief had not yet returned. The first time Gi Gu had caught sight of that chief, he was already far stronger than Gi Gu. A blue-skinned body that was far bigger than Gi Gu's. That memory left in the goblin a sense of fear that to this day ruled over it. Gi Gu had after all only become the leader of the horde because of its predecessor's death. A position that merely rolled over to its feet, so to speak. There were no goblin rares during that time either. Gi Gu believed in its own fortune. And at the same time, it had hoped not to repeat its predecessor's mistake. And just as Gi Gu had hoped, in its time as chief of its horde, they were able to gather more food. And they had even succeeded in catching humans. But then that goblin came. And it easily slayed their enemies. And once again, Gi Gu and its horde had found themselves under someone's lead again. But this time, they were far more numerous than before. And their food supplies were even more abundant. So much so that they probably would never taste the pain of starvation ever again. Then there was that time when Gi Gu first learned the taste of the double-head's meat. It was a taste that he would never forget. But that goblin was not content, no. That goblin carried with him a frightening ambition. He wished to gather under him the numerous goblin villages. And that ambition sparked desire in Gi Gu's eyes. Each time Gi Gu saw the chief, fire would light from inside its heart. But whether these feelings that Gi Gu felt were loyalty or jealousy, Gi Gu did not know. Gi Gu knew only one thing. The chief leaving would be problematic. That alone Gi Gu understood. The king hasn't come yet, thought Gi Gu. Gi Go called Gi Gu out to the newly added goblin rare. The goblins were currently struggling hard against the wave of wolves before them as they fought to make a path of retreat. Keep going like that, ordered Gi Gu. Then Gi Gu ordered the opposite to its own men. Come. We need to save the king. Without trying to bite at me, the wolves rammed themselves against me as the grey wolf waited for me to run out of strength. That overly calculating fighting style rendered me powerless. If only the wolves would come to bite at me, then I might still have some chance at winning so long as I'm able to stop one or two of them. But the grey wolf continued to have the wolves relentlessly throw themselves at me, while it waited outside of my range, rushing towards me from time to time in a speed I can't match. And each and every time I would be sent flying. Using my sword like a cane, I helped myself up. Even though I know they're just trying to tire me, I can't let up the shield, otherwise, the surrounding wolves will tear me to pieces. I don't have any other choice, but to cast my shield, and try to kill the wolves to the best of my abilities. The situation is getting bleaker and bleaker. But at the same time, there's no other path for me to take. What to do? But then right at that moment, the area behind me suddenly became noisy. I saw Gi Gu kick away the wolves surrounding me as it came to my side with reinforcements. Chief, please return, said Gi Gu. Thank you, I thought. Only, this still leaves us with the problem of the enemy here. But I understand. We'll retreat like this. Restrain the wolves. I ordered. And slowly we retreated, carefully making sure that the wolves won't be able to surround us. The wolves probably chose a place with few trees because of their fighting style. So in that case, retreating to a place with plenty of trees should increase our chances of winning. At the grey wolf's howl, the subordinate wolves spread apart, widening their surround over us. Gi Gu, keep your guard up as we enter the forest. As I gripped my sword, I kept my gaze on the grey wolf. I slowly retreated, and the grey wolf calmly closed in on us. So long as we keep this, we'll be able to retreat as soon as we enter the forest. But as I thought that to myself, I let my guard down. It was only a moment, yet it was at that very moment that the grey wolf attacked, and my response was too slow. At the very moment where we were about to enter the forest, away from the flatlands, the grey wolf vanished, and it instantly closed the gap between us. That loud bellow shook the earth. Behind me was a tree, in front of me was the unstopping rushing grey wolf. At the same time, the brown wolves closed in from all directions. Gi Gu, run. Don't let, without even any time to give any orders, the grey wolf sent me flying. My body slammed into the trees, and the force of the trees breaking passed through the shield into my body. After 2 or 3 bounces, I stood up. As I stood up, I braced myself for the wolves' next attack, but it didn't come. Not the grey wolf, nor the wolves surrounding Gi Gu could be seen. All of them were gone without exception. Did they let us go? Staggering, the worst scenario flashed through the back of my head. Don't tell me, they. Gi Gu, we're heading for the main unit. I struck my unmoving legs, and I began to sprint for the main unit. Release, I muttered. As the darkness surrounding me receded, Gi Gu and I made way for the main unit at full speed. For driving away the grey wolf, your level has risen. 12 equals 14.